Hello, everyone. Today I would like to make a response to a so-called tier list by the YouTuber known as Duncan. First of all, it goes without saying that this tier list is the average Redditor's understanding of philosophy perfectly condensed. This is Reddit, the video, and is full of Reddit tier takes. An absolutely Reddit moment. Now, you may be asking what that even means, but I will not be elaborating further. I think it's perfectly obvious that Reddit can be used as an adjective to describe this video. I will admit that this video is personal preference and the hierarchy he constructed is arbitrary. He even goes as far as to include wanting to hang out with them as a criteria in his ranking scheme. That may be true, but that also makes it very biased. Not good. For instance, the philosophers are ranked based on how much he politically agrees with them. He really shouldn't have ranked them on how nice and progressive they were. Bloody hell, Duncan. Wokery much? One thing I will say is that he put Nietzsche in S tier, and I love that mustached fellow like you wouldn't believe. That was based. But he also placed me at the bottom of F tier. That take can be characterized as cringe. It is fundamentally biased and presuppositional. He had a whole 3-minute section talking about me and didn't even rigorously debunk every single thought I've ever had. Talk about reductive. I'm doing much more than just helping young men make their beds. The creator knows all that, and yet he is being spiteful. He refused to acknowledge the deeper meaning of making one's bed and how it is an instantiation of self-sufficiency and responsibility. He failed to mention many of my Twitter fiascos, including getting dunked on by David Harvey. I also used my expertise in psychology to rant about how the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model Yumi Nu is not beautiful. It's absolutely crucial that we speak truth to power by body-shaming literal models and participating in superficial culture war issues. He completely disregarded my seminal work, Maps of Meaning. He didn't mention the brilliant ideas I extended from Joseph Campbell's comparative mythology and Carl Jung's archetypes. It's almost as if, in a tongue-in-cheek way, he deliberately left out my worthwhile contributions in order to generate controversy by placing me in the F tier on the thumbnail. I can't imagine why someone would do this. Let's analyze this further. Would it even be possible for someone to rank philosophers in an unbiased, objective fashion? Isn't there an inherent irony in the hubris of a YouTuber ranking some of the wisest, most prominent thinkers in the history of Western civilization? Suppose that instead of the arbitrary criteria Duncan used, he instead ranked these philosophers based on the amount of times their names have appeared in books using the Google Ngram viewer. This is a fairly adequate proxy for a philosopher's influence. However, this fundamentally misunderstands the purpose of the tier list format. It is a hierarchy of the author's preferences, and incorporating objective measures entirely strips the work of its substance. It would also make for a boring video. The act of placing a philosopher in a particular rank is a necessarily reductive practice. If a philosopher is placed in C tier, does this imply that I fully agree with some ideas or partially agree with all of them? It's bloody confusing. An interpreter's relationship with a philosopher's work is much more nuanced than anything that can be captured in a tier ranking. On top of that, despite the video being nearly an hour long, only a few minutes are dedicated to each philosopher. Condensing an entire career's worth of insights and arguments into such a small amount of time is a disservice not only to the legacy of these thinkers, but to philosophical inquiry as a whole. And further, is it even reasonable to include a figure such as myself among thinkers like Plato, Nietzsche, Descartes, and Locke? To start with, despite citing a number of philosophers and literary figures in my books, I am essentially a psychologist and political pundit. The only reason to include me in a video like this would be to seek engagement by angering my fans and pandering to my haters. The real irony with this whole video is that its reductive nature and bold, baseless evaluations are precisely what made it successful. When discussing Immanuel Kant, Duncan unintentionally mispronounced his Prussian hometown Königsberg as Kronenborg. Perhaps he was thinking about the beer Kronenborg 1664, and yet this obvious error also amplified the success of this video since several people commented to correct him on his pronunciation. When you think about it, it is actually in Duncan's best interest to mispronounce terms and make factual errors, since these act as a call to action, persuading viewers to leave comments and drive engagement. Now, it would be ridiculous for him to do this intentionally when his goal is presumably the dissemination of knowledge and insights, but the incentives are clear. It is truly sad to contemplate this reality of creating content in an online space dominated by algorithms.